My controlling fathers will had one final, cruel joke, so his kids turned his punishment into their profit. My father didn't run a family. He ran a corporation with 3 unwilling employees, me, my sister Clara, and my brother Tom. He was a man made of spreadsheets and disappointment. His love was conditional. His approval was a currency he seldom spent. So when he died, none of us were surprised that the air in the lawyer's office felt less like grief and more like a hostile takeover negotiation. We sat there, dressed in black, performing the solemnity he would have demanded. Clara was twisting her handkerchief. Tom was staring at a spot on the wall, and I was just trying to breathe. We knew the inheritance would be significant. He was wealthy. We also knew it would come with strings. He never gave anything freely. The lawyer, a man as dry as old paper, read through the primary bequests, the house to the 3 of us. The stock portfolio divided equally. It was all straightforward, too straightforward. I could feel the other shoe hovering over us, and then the lawyer cleared his throat. And now, he said, for the codicil regarding the automotive collection. My father's true love wasn't his family. It was his collection of 10 pristine, vintage European sports cars. They were his babies, kept in a climate-controlled garage we were barely allowed to enter. The codicil states, the lawyer read slowly, savoring the moment, that before any heir can access their portion of the main liquid assets, they must, as a team, personally restore each of the 10 vehicles to Concours-level condition. They must use only original, period-correct parts. All work must be done by their own hands. Receipts for all parts must be submitted for verification. A wave of nausea hit me. It was the perfect posthumous torture. He knew we were not handy. I was a graphic designer, Clara was a chef, and Tom was a software engineer. We couldn't change a tire, let alone rebuild a vintage Ferrari engine. He had effectively locked our inheritance away for years, maybe a decade, forcing us to toil away in that garage, punishing us for not being the sons he wanted. Clara started to cry silently. Tom just swore under his breath. It was a checkmate from the grave. For a week, we were in despair. We went to the garage and just stared at the cars. They were beautiful, gleaming monuments to his cruelty. We were trapped. We couldn't afford to hire people, the will forbade it. We couldn't afford the parts without the inheritance. We were supposed to fail, to give up, to live out our lives knowing he had beaten us one last time. It was Tom who broke the silence. He was looking at a classic Porsche, a wrench lying near the tire. No, he said slowly. The will says we asterisk have to restore them. It says we have to use original parts. It says we have to submit receipts. He paused, a slow grin spreading across his face. It doesn't say we have to do it well asterisk. That was it, the loophole, the one variable our father, in all his meticulous planning, had overlooked. His ego never allowed for the possibility that we would intentionally do a poor job on his precious cars. The plan was beautiful in its simplicity. We pooled what little money we had. We didn't spend it on tools or manuals. We spent it on incorporating a business. We called it Heirloom Restorations LLC. Then, as a legally formed company, we took out a massive business loan using the cars themselves as collateral. The bank was happy to do it. The collection was worth millions. With the loan, we followed the will to the letter. We ordered the most expensive, period-correct original parts from all over the world. We submitted every single receipt to the estate's lawyer. Then we got to work. I personally sanded the paint off a Jaguar E-Type with the wrong grit sandpaper, leaving swirling scars in the metal. Clara, the chef, tried to reupholster the leather seats on a Mercedes. The seams were crooked and the stuffing bulged. Tom, the engineer, attempted to rebuild a carburetor. It ended up in a box of greasy parts we labeled extra. We documented everything with photos and videos, our clumsy, sincere efforts to fulfill our father's dying wish. It was a disaster, a multi-million-dollar disaster. After 6 months of this malicious compliance, we declared the project complete. We presented our work to the estate lawyer. He looked like he was going to have a stroke. The cars were technically restored with original parts by our own hands. They were also utterly worthless, but we had met the conditions. He had no choice but to release our inheritance. The first thing we did was use a small portion of it to pay off the business loan. The second thing we did, as Heirloom Restorations LLC, was declare bankruptcy. The cars, as the business's only assets, were seized by the bank to be auctioned off to cover the debt. A few months later, a check arrived in the mail for each of us. It was for a surprisingly large amount. It was our share of the surplus from the auction. Apparently, even in their mangled state, the parts were valuable enough to a few specialty shops that the bank made a profit. My father wanted to trap us in his garage for years. Instead, we owned it for 6 months, paid ourselves through a business loan, and then got paid again when the bank cleaned up our mess. His collection is gone, scattered to scrapyards and specialty mechanics across the country. And we, his 3 disappointing children, are finally free.